So today we're here with Georg Püschel of Wandelbots, co-founder and many roles since co-founding the company, and we'll hear about some or all of them. I
Yeah.
want to start, George, by asking you, what was it that first prompted you and your co-founders to say, "Hey, we want to start this robotics company"?
Yes, thanks, Jack. Thanks for having me here. So when I remember that back in 2000, I don't know, 15 or so, we were all research assistants at a local university, and our domain is software engineering and software architecture, right? And the problem with software architecture it's a model. It's a model of the real world, and broader audiences can't understand what's going on in there. So we thought we have to connect the software architecture thing with hardware. We need to show what we are researching on with something physical. And so we bought our first some robots, and then we basically demonstrated our research findings of how machines or how software and systems change according to different environments based on that machine. So that there was very reactive demos with the robots, and that's how we got into robotics. And then we met a professor from Munich, and this professor was into intelligent clothing. And basically, he had a jacket, and he was measuring how humans move, uh, what their vital signals are, right? And we tried to connect that also with the robot. So that was initial, the ignition, so to say, of Wandelbots in the early days.
So at first it was actually it wasn't so much for the robots themselves; it was to demonstrate principles that you were working on in software to bring it into sort of three dimensions. Am I getting you?
Yes, exactly.
Wow. All right. So that was the spark, and then what was the moment where you guys were like, let's create a company? Like, there's something more here that we want to explore.
Yeah. So in 2015, we tried to attend a competition that was hosted by KUKA, which is an South Germany, Augsburg-based robotics company. And they were having a competition where you can show innovative projects on industrial robots. And we thought we are going to build that thing where you can control a robot with a jacket. So we had a jacket, and we basically put some sensors in, so to measure the motion of the guy wearing the jacket, and map that onto the robot motion, so that we basically can quickly program the robot and having it mimicking the humans without programming it. And that was basically the first thing that we built for a trade fair. And when we have been on the trade fair, we got so many good feedback that we thought we need to found a company and try to get our way into in a commercial company, because we're also a bit, let's say, frustrated about the slow motion, the slow trajectory within academics, right? So we had it as a side project, so to say, to our research assistant positions. And yeah, then we went to many other trade fairs with Deutsche Telekom because we had a very close connection with them. They were at that time presenting robots and robotic control with mobile networks via 5G, right? Because the technology is equipped with a certain industrial feature that allows to uh, control machines with very low latency. And Telecom wanted to have demonstrators to show that also to a broader audience, and we built the demos for that. And that was basically the background how we more and more developed the technology that we are still using in Wandelbots. And yeah, and then at a certain time in 2017, we found our first VC, our venture capitalist investor in Berlin. That was Atlantic Labs. And they made a seed investment with us. We created a new company was then really finally Wandelbots. And then we dropped out of university. We squeezed out our own chair. We were six founders, which is way too much in retrospective. and yeah, and squeeze out some other chairs. So machine programming people and also designers. And then we grew from, let's say, just the R6 basically to 30 people within 2 years and to 200 people in after, I don't know, 4 years or so, right?
Wow. From 6 to 30 to 200 in 4 years.
Yeah,
Coming
it was,
straight out of university. Whew.
yeah, that was really a race and much growth pain involved, but we did that. Um, and we changed the product completely in that history. So from the jacket to a pen to a software platform now. But absolutely a great learning.
I want to hear some of the learnings and some of the growth pains and frictions. Now, years later, you can describe it in a sentence or two. We changed the product, we changed the product again.
Yeah,
Those are chapter titles that maybe gloss over. When I imagine that, I imagine not everybody having the same realization at once, and maybe
true.
some constructive conflict, maybe some not so constructive conflict on the way to clarifying what is the direction that we actually want to go in. Tell us about some of the growth pains and frictions in getting to this new direction.
Yeah, so there are many dimensions of that. So product-wise, first of all, it's basically your when you're noticing that your product market fit is not perfect or not good enough to go on, you need to change the value proposition basically. And changing the value proposition has always effects on what features are right, what quality do you need to go into a certain market, whom do you approach with your product, right? And so we, first of all, when we built the jacket, for instance, we found that first of all there are very many problems of feasibility in the product. So first of all, you have to wash a jacket, you have to build it in different sizes, and the hardware that you equip the jackets with is very hard to fix on a certain point. So the precision is basically lacking, and then finally it wasn't accepted by the industry because it was just too fancy, so to say. And we started basically developing the next product, our second hardware product, the trace pen, in parallel to that. So because we weren't very, no, let's say we weren't very decisive at that moment to start with something completely new. We thought we actually can have both products, and our platform can power both input methods, so to say, the jacket and the pen. And so we built the pen. The pen is basically or has been a tracking device based on AR, VR technology, HTC Vive, and Valve technology, basically what you are used to use in gaming. And the feature was that you can basically draw a line on a workpiece, and then the robot can basically use that recorded trajectory to apply glue or do a welding seam or grip something. And that was basically the no-code training method for industrial robots. It worked much better already as than a jacket. But also this product was basically hard to not to manufacture, but to sell. And the problem was here that an industrial robot, which you can imagine as basically an arm with a flange that you can attach a tool to, it's a very universal machine. And depending on what tool you use to equip the robot, you have a completely different application. You have a gluing device, you have a welding device, a gripping device, screwing device, right? And for all those different applications, you had to build different user experiences. And we tried to first of all squeeze it within one app, and then we tried to build different apps, and that was all very overwhelming, too much variability. And so we switched now to the platform approach, where we can provide our technology and build apps based on the technology to capture the variability and do basically another kind of platform business. That's our new format, how we reach out with our value proposition. So that was basically the product dimension of it all. So, and then there was a lot of organizational pain in that whole history. So what we, for instance, started with is a completely flat hierarchy, of course, because we were all founders. We were, so to say, all equal, right? There was a CEO, okay. He had some extra liability on the company and responsibility, and we had different skills, of course. But when we have grown to, let's say, 15 people or so, we thought, well, we had a lot of people and things are very chaotic here. So we need to install an organizational structure, so a hierarchy. So we thought the best engineers are becoming heads of something. So, and that turned out not so good because you need certain skill set to manage people. And
And
then
what were some of the sort of not so
yeah,
good examples or
on
tenets?
it's basically we were a full-fledged engineering organization with only engineers. So that means, first of all, it's tough to navigate between building something and managing the people. So how to do you balance that those two tasks? And also the question, if you are basically supervising people, is it good to have a say in which technology is used and what exact features are being built, right? So those were the questions that we raised in that phase. And well, it was a constant struggle basically to find out who has a say for what. So in 2019 already, so 2 years basically after our incorporation, we found a new discipline that we didn't really know about before, and that was product management. And of course, everyone wants to be agile, right? So agile software engineering, that is the thing that everyone learns in university, and we were quite naive in that moment. So we thought we need uh, product owners, agile coaches, scrum masters, such things, and the developers, of course. So this kind of separation of roles. And well, that also didn't go so well because we were never having, so we were estimating a lot and spending a lot of time on the HR process. And well, that was also very difficult. And then we still had those engineering heads and they were conflicting still with the product owners. And then we had a time, for instance, where we had a very deep hierarchy where you lose the information between the single individual contributor and the most upper level of management because basically people are defending basically their subsidiaries from first of all getting too much anticipation into the future because then they might feel stressed what how much the workload can be, and the other way around also from we are not yet fully done, but maybe we sell it as if we are already done, right? So this kind of conflict appeared, right? And after a while, we noticed that we need to make those teams autonomous. And we separated the role of the engineering manager from a product manager role. And we basically moved away from product owners. So we have no complete set of HR roles anymore in our organization. We have product managers, we have engineering managers, and engineering managers are for personal relations basically and for getting rid of obstacles, right? Product managers are the ones that try to capture customer truth, that talk with customers, that also involve the engineers in understanding what customers want. Uh, so optimally, the engineers go also with the product manager from time to time in customer interviews. We have a CPO and we don't have a CTO anymore because we think that the product perspective is much more important than the technology perspective.
Wow, I want to hear more about that last part. Um, what do you notice? What feels different in the company now that you have these clear product management roles with what sound like clear role definitions versus the attempt at agile that you made earlier? What feels different today?
So first of all, our first attempt was basically forcing everyone to do Scrum, right? So that means that everyone had to adhere to the same cadence, which was impossible to maintain after a while when we noticed that we have some teams that are slower paced because they have to do a lot of very difficult engineering, and that was were the ones that are most closely to the robot. So the people who write C++ code and have to do the real-time thing and so on. So basically, they can't they didn't catch up with the same cadence than the other teams. So UI people are much faster in changing things, right? Then we had the experience that the estimations are just not worth it. That was our learning basically. So no estimations are the things that I learned at least. And now it feels like basically the teams are autonomous. They can decide on their own which exact process they are conduct. So the last team that I really worked with was, for instance, all about doing just sticky notes on whiteboards, and that was fully okay and worked best, much better than digital notes. For instance, we were also getting along with each other in the office instead of just being super remote. And also, I feel that the product managers are now making a rational choice about the insights that we capture from customers. And yeah, everything is also controlled by OKR, right? So on the upper levels, so we are only employing OKRs on upper levels and let teams commit to a certain objective, but we don't go deeper because what I also learned is that OKRs or top level objectives often compete with your backlog and the Scrum goals, right? So you need to be careful of mapping or dripping it down to the individual contributors. That's not always helpful.
So I'm noticing a parallel, and I'm wondering if this is actually true.
Hmm.
A parallel between what you're building and how you're building it. What you're building, so you shifted to a software architecture that helps coordinate robots.
Hmm.
And on the company level, it sounds like you've shifted to a different sort of company operating system as well that also helps coordinate not robots but people. Uh, and the first is that does that parallel sound accurate?
Yes, in a way, of course, right? So yeah, I would say you need to build an operating system for people. That is absolutely true, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Okay. So that checks out. And I wonder at the leadership level, it sounds like there were some, you said we had six co-founders. That was too many at first. We had a CPO. Now we deliberately don't have a chief product officer, but sorry, we do, but we don't have a CTO.
yeah.
But I wonder at the leadership level, what lessons have you learned? How has that evolved over the last 8 or 10 years of this effort?
So when you're starting with a very fresh startup, it's basically the first thing what you notice is that you split roles, right? But when you are all from software engineering, you have heard something about accounting and you have heard something about leadership, and you're not actually professionals in that domain. So
Yeah.
what you feel is the uncertainty in the processes and the compliance to certain standards and sometimes even laws, because something you dive into a gray zone, right? Is that you ultimately want to professionalize. You hire people that are more a professional than you, that know what they are doing, and that reduce the uncertainty, right? So that's the first thing that you do, and then you sometimes have to step away from a role. For instance, I started with HR, accounting, business development, and engineering. So I was a complete generalist in my role. I'm still a generalist, but at that time I even had to fulfill those kinds of top skills and tasks. And so you get in much more competent people than yourself, and that is great because then you can concentrate on the actual challenges that is they're building a product and making the company grow and getting funding and so on, right? So, but what we learned is that shouldn't reinvent the wheel in every certain aspect of your company. For instance, in HR, please do HR as the current no the current sense of common knowledge is, right? So because when you think you need to do interviews in a certain way because you're a very special unicornish fresh startup and you're doing it like no one else, it might turn out that you don't find the right interviewees and employees because you're just missing the point.
Yeah.
Why people decide to work in your company, what they demand from you, how much effort they put in, and what risk they take on their own, right? Or
This is a great point. So if you were advising, and I know you mentioned to me that you are involved in the startup ecosystem, and I want to
yeah,
hear more about that.
that's true.
If you're advising um, earlier stage co-founders, startup leaders, where would you say they should reinvent the wheel, and where should they not?
Oh, that's a good question. So I would say reinvent the wheel in terms of how you um, how you put your value proposition. So the most important thing that you do as an early entrepreneur is validation, right? So you have you maybe you're very smart and you're a technologist and you're an engineer and you have a great technology and you think everyone needs that, but you need to do the validation task. And that is the thing where you can reinvent the wheel because it's very, very important to find out how you approach your certain niche. And your niche is specific to you, and the product is specific to you. So that is the region to reinvent the wheel. Where you shouldn't reinvent the wheel are processes that are supportive. For instance, HR, financials, getting funding, talking to legal, I don't know what, and also leader. You can invent leadership in a way. You can reinvent that because every company has a certain specific culture, and the culture is an important thing that you carry on from originating from the founders. So if the founders group had a certain culture, how they speak with each other, how they think, what vision they have, right? You have to convey that to your first some engineers, and they have to spread it like in a Ponzi scheme into the remaining upcoming new employees. And you can reinvent the culture, of course, in a certain way, but be moral and be friendly with each other. Otherwise, it's going to be a toxic environment. So there are limits, of course, of reinvention.
I love it. So what I hear you saying is there are two places primarily to reinvent. One is like what your company is actually about. Whatever
Yeah,
you're doing, make sure you're validating that. And the second is an honoring of the original co-founders and the leadership culture that's there. That can be yours in the same way that uh, you invent your own family culture when you have a family.
yeah.
Take
So,
from
so absolutely. So look at, I don't know, Google and Amazon, right? So both are great companies for sure to work in, and they have completely different cultures. So Google is all about that high innovation, OKR, I don't know, fancy stuff. And Amazon is all about writing press releases from the future and checking twice. And but still, the both core cultures work well, and different people are differently satisfied with that because they have certain characters, right? And your company might have your own culture.
Yeah, beautiful. Um, there are two things in our first conversation that you mentioned that I want to hear more about. One is, we'll take them one at a time. You mentioned, as I said a moment ago, that you're involved in supporting other startups. And I'm curious, what do you enjoy most about that?
So yes, so after our Series C, I had the chance to get a bit out of Wandelbots in a way of spreading the word and talking to more people and getting to know fund managers, business angels, and other founders. I'm also doing some business angeling, right? So, and some consulting, mentoring, coaching with them. And the good thing is that I actually feel there are some fresh founders, some first-time founders that can learn something from me when I share my experiences. Just I'm not telling them what to do, right? But I'm telling them I experienced that in that way because and that made us suffer a lot or that worked great. And then there are also founders that are in some dimensions much further, much more advanced than I am, and then I'm learning a lot. And the more founders I'm exposed to, the more I learn for myself. Also, getting that back to Wandelbots, getting new ideas. It's very inspiring. So,
What's something that you've learned in your coaching or your support of other founders that you've brought back to Wandelbots, however small or significant?
yeah, that's yeah, very good. And so I learned basically, for instance, the whole distribution thing, right? We are here in Saxony. In Saxony, the startups are very technical, especially here in Dresden, because we have a technical university and there are a lot of engineers that are educated here. So then I went a lot of to Berlin. I met people in Berlin. In Berlin, there are very few startups just that are technical. They are more on in e-commerce and SaaS and so on, and they are all about distribution, right? So I learned that I totally missed that point that their distribution is sometimes much more important than having the greatest technology. So that is, for instance, one point on a course granular level, right? But I'm of course learning the details how to do the distribution. I'm just trying also to copy that sometimes and mapping that onto Wandelbots back from those people, and also learning, of course, how other people approach funding, for instance. Of course, many do that now. Not we started from the beginning on with a VC, and I learning getting to know many founders that are starting with business angel rounds, for instance. That's something that I learned, and yeah, so many interesting facts, and also how to externalize development, for instance, which we never did to a certain point, or very little did. They are externalizing design, for instance. So if you have some cash in the bank, you can do that. And yeah, so or for instance, how to work remotely. So we were always founders that were needed to get hands-on with the robots, and that is pretty difficult to do from a remote, right? With Nova, you could do this remote, but it's maybe not the greatest thing. And also, of course, since we were founded, or we incorporated before COVID, right? So, and after COVID, everything is different, and now you can observe how all those other companies are doing it with remote engineers, and that gives you better access to, of course, to the job market when you are hiring people.
Yeah, yeah. Um, I'm loving how, and I see this myself as a coach, how being exposed to dozens of different startups lets me see so many different approaches, some more effective than others. Uh,
Sure.
and then taking that back myself, taking it to clients. Just one more question on that. What would you say are the top recurring challenges that you see recently in the startups that you're advising or investing in?
Yeah, okay. So I need to think about that a bit. So first of all, I would say some startups are they have a very flat, still quite flat trajectory on getting customers in, right? So, and sometimes they also fear to talk too much to customers, and that's of course a bad thing. So you need to convince them to go out and get the truth in, because there's no truth within the building, right? You need to get out and talk to the customers more and learn and learn and learn. And then you need to basically build it into your product and try to find product market fit. So that's a very difficult thing. Another thing that I don't sometimes see is that the people fear to hire engineers, because engineers are expensive, and yet they need to be convinced that what you are doing is great. And if you're, so we were all engineering founders, but those people, some of the founders are from economics, and they need to learn that their ideas can only be executed with a very committed set of engineers that are working within the company. You can't do everything externally. You need to have a core team that does very quickly, with a lot of sacrifice, what you think is the right thing to do. And so basically those are the two challenges that I see. I don't think that funding is a real challenge if you have attraction. That still works out quite well in early stage startups. And for the later startups, I would say the the situation is completely different than for Wandelbots because we raised a lot on fantasy, of course, and now the market is a bit tighter, and you need to have new arguments.
Yeah. So the two big takeaways are essentially you got to get yourself out of the building
Yeah,
and some engineers in it.
yeah, true, absolutely. That's a good constellation how you would do it.
I love it. And I know that you're also interested, I think, based on your experience, in AI for product management. Um,
Yeah.
what are you playing around with there?
Yeah, so since ChatGPT, I was also in a way thrilled about the advancements in that domain, and I thought, wow, now you can maybe try to automate things that were not automatable before because just there was no algorithm to process this data into the format that you really need. And what I think, so, and I'm doing having also a side project on that on Caspers.io, um, that we are trying to push to push down the limit that you need to do product management in a more sophisticated way. So because what you always do is you get in customer insights, right? And the customer insights are basically have to be processed into hypotheses, and the hypotheses are going to be validated by new data. And you need to find out how to get new data in, how to interview customers, how to process the insights into new hypotheses, how to process the hypothesis into maybe experiments that you have to do, how to derive the delivery part of it. So how you do you do how do you map the findings into what to develop, and how do you track the product management from discovery to delivery to find out what is the right thing to do, and have I done the right thing, and why did that thing actually, right? And I think product management is a very tough discipline because you're in the middle of very many stakeholders. You have to talk to the CEO. He has an opinion. You have to talk to the customers. They have a lot of opinions. You have internal people, you have engineers that think that is feasible, that would be better for the customers. You have designers, you have all those people that are telling you what to do, and you basically have very limited means to demonstrate that you have performed well, right? So because in engineering you do estimates and then show your storyboards, or you deliver features and you do DORA matrix in order to measure how many artifacts you have delivered in a certain time frame or how many bugs you have fixed, right? In product management, that is all not possible, and to basically be to be taken serious from all the other stakeholders, you might need new digital tools, and we are researching what would be an option for that.
Awesome. Anything to share yet, or are you still in the research phase?
No, no, not yet, but you can register for the wait list.
I know a lot of people who would want to be on that wait list. I love it.
Yeah,
Okay, and so what I'm sensing, if I can simplify the journey of the last 8 or 10 years, is um, you and this group of co-founders, you dove in, you started building, you were really invested. Initially, you were in this CTO role, and there's been this awakening to the importance of product management and product led building instead of uh, let's just build something here, let's just build something
yeah,
here.
absolutely.
A more user centric approach. And it seems like you've been zooming out more and more and more. Um, First, more to the company level and what you're building for, and now even beyond the company to other startups, even beyond other startups, to sort of the practice of product management itself, uh, and how you might contribute to innovation on that front.
Yeah, absolutely. So what I basically did is that I took the learnings. So now I'm not only trying to uh, spread the word about what we have learned to the single founders that I meet for the other startups that I support, right? It's also that I try to basically condense the know-how and the learnings into a digital product because I think there's something missing in a certain niche, right? So that's also an attempt not only to support product management, but also to, of course, process the learnings on how to build a startup into something new. So how to validate that thing that I'm building, how to talk to customers, how to decide for the right features, how to not go too long without publishing something, right? How to save the money for things that you actually don't need. Yeah, so, and maybe also even going without funding and doing bootstrapping, that could also be a thing that I never attempted before. Well, so is basically the zoom out path that I'm taking. That's true.
Yeah. So in a way, by turning it into a product, you're forcing yourself to condense and crystallize many of the learnings that you've gleaned in your journey, that you're starting to pass on, but making it more accessible as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So, so I think product management is for everyone. Not only for the big companies that where product managers only have a say about what color a button has, right? So when you are working for a very big company, then sometimes that is already the discriminator of that you get 1,000 customers or less, right? But also for companies that are maybe just starting up with product management and don't have a lot of resources, and if you are a fresh founder, a first-time founder, for instance, and you need to validate, you're basically also doing product management, but you're doing it on your own, and it's called entrepreneurship. But it's actually the same, right? So you're doing validation, and that's your most important task.
Love it. George, any final thoughts that you want to make sure that our listeners hear before we close up?
No, not really. I thank you a lot. So I invite everyone to maybe reach out to me if you have questions about product management, about maybe some support for your startup. I'm here and I'm listening, and I love to talk to new people. And yeah, that's basically it. So that's me.
All right. And where can people find if they want to follow you, or they want to find you, if they want to be on this wait list, where can they find you?
Yeah, so the domain is castspells.io. So I made up that name because in the beginning of the AI boom, there was the idea that you have to cast spells on the LLM. So that's basically another idea of prompting. So cast a spell, right? And the domain is castspells.io. And you can also reach out via LinkedIn. So that's my preferred channel.
Great. Uh, castspells.io. I love
Yeah.
it. Okay. George Püschel, thank you so much for joining AI for that.
Thanks, Jack. Thanks for having me. It was a great talk, and I hope you hear. I'm very looking forward for the publishing of that podcast, right?
Great. All right. I'll keep it recording in case there are any gems, but we
Yeah.
can call it done. I'm so curious about this work, uh, because it overlaps a lot with mine. I also work primarily with founders with startups. Um, yeah, I just want to know what form it takes. Where people are finding you, where you're finding them, what your engagements with other startups look like right now.
So basically, I'm getting at least 3 reach outs a week, and people are calling me. So, and some seek for funding, others seek for consultancy, and I'm also in basically in collaboration with syndicates. At least two of them. My most advanced syndicate might be in Berlin. It's the TOEIC. It's the translation um, um, is basically the operator angel collective.
Mm-hmm.
It's led by Felix Schmidt, who is basically part of the EWOR um, ecosystem in Berlin. That's an accelerator that uh, tries to be as smart as Y Combinator, which is a great challenge, I would say. But the syndicate is basically jointly investing into startups. So that's a thing, and he does very good validation and due diligence. And sometimes I also find companies on my own, and then I have a very intense relation typically with the founders, which is great because then I learn the most, and they maybe also to a certain point that I can still anticipate. But after Series C, it gets a bit difficult for me to follow up because then you are out anyway as a business angel.
Yeah, yeah. It sounds super exciting. Um, I'm curious if typically I've worked with very high growth startups, mainly in Silicon Valley,
Mhm.
but now I'm here. I'm curious if you think any of those groups would be interested in like a free workshop of sorts,
Mhm.
more focused on the kinds of leadership challenges that you were speaking to earlier.
Yeah, okay. So you're providing workshops, or
Yeah,
how
yeah,
do you do that?
yeah.
Yes, just send me a bit more information so I can distribute that, of course, right?
Yeah.
So that's okay.
I'll send you one that I'm doing. I'm doing a very short, like 30-minute lightning lesson on Monday.
Yeah,
I'll send that to you, and you can take a look and get a glimpse of like, oh, okay, this is what Jack does. This is what
yeah,
it like. So
absolutely.
what I could do, I mean, if any of those syndicates were interested, or what was the Y Combinator one called?
That's not my syndicate. That is the accelerator of the guy that founded the syndicate, and it's all called EWOR. So EWOR. It's in
Okay.
Berlin, right?
Um, doing private workshops or cohorts for them as well.
Um, I'm not doing so much workshops. I'm really
I was
maintaining.
saying I could do something like that for.
Yeah. So yeah, so when you send me information, I can basically send out messages and distribute that and recommend you. That's something I can do, right?
Yeah, yeah, terrific, terrific. And if when I'm speaking to startups, if they're interested, what would I listen for to know that you might be a good match for consulting, for coaching, for investment, or what's like your ideal profile of a startup who you want to be in
So
conversation?
very typically very early stage. The better I can tell them what I experience because that's most of my portfolio companies are also very early stage. So that's the where I collected the most know-how in, right? And I love software, so I can also go into robotics, right? So uh, unless I don't like to be typecasted too much into that domain because I have a lot of exposure, right? But yeah, so in e-commerce not so much, right? So robotics and SaaS is the thing that I'm looking at, right? So
Yeah, yeah,
and if someone needs to have a glimpse into the German market, if that is anywhere anyhow necessary or beneficial, then maybe that's also the point.
yeah. Beautiful. Um, okay. Okay, so I will follow up with you. I'll send you this workshop that I'm doing. It might be interesting for, yeah, I work with a lot of co-founders, but there are a lot of managers in general. So if there are
Okay.
people who are managing people at Wandelbots who you think might be interested as well, uh,
Hmm.
you can share.
Yeah,
It.
of course. Yeah, I'm thinking I'm trying to find the right cohort. So yeah, so maybe I can also start with sharing just something on my LinkedIn account if you have something that I can do.
Terrific.
Uh, and direct reach out could also be an option. I'm actually also in a kind of CTO community that is very large.
Perfect.
I
Perfect.
let's find out whether I'm allowed to do some advertising there.
Cool. If it's free, then maybe, I mean, not all it's free, but this thing next week is free. So
Yeah. Okay.
it's easy to advertise free. I really appreciate that thought. As soon as we get off the call, I'll send you some stuff that you can edit and make it easy for you to share.
Absolutely. Fantastic. Thank you.
Okay. Oh no, thank you, thank you. It's so fun for me. I mean, one of the reasons that I love my work is just getting to talk to people who start things and keep following their curiosity all the way down the rabbit hole, and turning it into concrete things as well, not just sitting in the library.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. That's actually also in a way what I do, right? So
yeah,
with uh,
I
with
love it.
the little ecosystem that we have here, and trying to, I also need to get a bit out of Saxony because here the bus is not that intense that in Berlin and Munich, right? So,
Yeah,
well,
awesome.
okay,
Yeah, thank you so much for making the time. This is really
yeah,
fun. I look forward to the next conversation whenever it is.
exactly. So, Dito, have a great day. Bye bye.
Bye.